What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. It's time for my updated playoff predictions heading into Week 9 of the 2022 college football season. And I have made some changes to my playoff predictions. There are a handful of teams that have a chance to make the playoff, in my opinion, a realistic chance. And trying to figure it out, I mean, I just go back and forth on these teams. I go back and forth on some of these games, like Ohio State and Michigan, potentially Georgia and Alabama in the SEC championship. And, a couple of games could really drastically change the playoff picture. And there are a lot of tough games to pick. So here's my predictions again as we head into Week 9. We'll start here with my number one team. I'm now back on Georgia. I think Georgia will beat Alabama in the SEC championship. And I'm not fully convinced that Alabama's going to make it to the SEC championship, because if they lose to LSU can still lose another game and make it to the SEC championship. So, there's a chance LSU winds up there. Alabama has to play LSU and Ole Miss on the road, and then if they do make it, I don't think they're going to beat Georgia. I think Georgia is too good. This is a really, really good team. I know everyone likes to go back to that Missouri game, but look, they had a bad game. But if you look at the rest of their season, there is enough of a sample size to see what this team is capable of, and I think they're capable of, at their best, being the best team in the country, and I think they're going to show that. I think they beat Tennessee, they beat Alabama, and they will be the number one seed. Number two seed, this is the one I'm having the hardest time with. I am back and forth. I'm going to stick with Michigan. So last week, I picked Michigan. I said they were going to beat Ohio State. That was my prediction. I'm leaning a little bit more towards Ohio State this week. Again, it's going to be really close. It's going to be close in my opinion. And so I was leaning towards Ohio State, and I thought, well, let's stick with Michigan. I don't want to keep flip-flopping back and forth. I'm going to stick with Michigan this week and see what Ohio State looks like against Penn State. I want to watch this team again. I watched them play Iowa. Yes, they're a great team, but I want to see them play against another great team or another really good team. I think Penn State is a really good team, and so I'm gonna maybe make the switch to Ohio State next week. We'll see how they look against Penn State. I just think this Michigan team is really, really good. That offensive line, that run game with J.J. McCarthy at quarterback, and a defense that, they lost some star power, but as a unit, they might be better on defense this year. This is just a really, really good team, and I think they're capable of going on the road and beating Ohio State. They beat them last year, and I think they're better than they were last year. Ohio State has a better defense. I really want to see Ohio State play Penn State. I want to see Ohio State's defense, I should say, against Penn State's run game. I don't know if they have really played a great offense or an offense that's good, that has a good rushing attack. And so that's the game, I think, that's going to let me know which way I should probably pick for this game. So, I'm going to go Michigan this week, and I think they go undefeated. They finish number 2. Number 3 for me is Tennessee. I think the Vols will be here at number 3, only losing to Georgia in a very close game. I think that's really about, you look at Kentucky this week, you look at a road game against South Carolina where they could potentially trip up. I think they win those games, and I think they'll lose a very close game to Georgia. I think the committee could put them at number 4. I know they're not supposed to do the whole matchup thing, but I think the committee might bump them up to number 3 because they'd have a really good win over Alabama, a really good win over LSU, non-conference win over Pittsburgh, and they've been more dominant against the teams that are not great, but the pretty good teams, like pretty much the teams in the SEC that they've played. And so I think the committee might actually put them at 3 and put Clemson at number 4. I do think Clemson will run the table and go undefeated. It would make more sense for Clemson to be at 3 and Tennessee to be at 4. But are they really going to want Georgia, Tennessee in the semifinals? And like I said, I don't think they're supposed to set these matchups. They're supposed to just rank the teams. But there is definitely an argument for Tennessee to still be ahead of Clemson. Clemson's not going to play a team like Georgia or Alabama. Tennessee would have to play both of them. In fact, they had the win over LSU. LSU might be a better team than Clemson plays all year. When we look at it at the end of the season. So I think Tennessee's resume is just too good. And I think you could make the argument for Ohio State to be at number 4 ahead of Clemson. If Ohio State only loses in a very close game to Michigan, and Michigan's the number 2 team, I think you can make that argument. I don't think the committee would do it. I don't think they're going to put an undefeated Power 5 team on the outside looking in favor of a one-loss non-conference champion. But if you're really looking at who the best 4 teams are, I think the best 4 teams probably are Georgia, Michigan, Tennessee, and Ohio State. And so if you really want the best 4 teams, Clemson might get left out. I'm really intrigued to see how that plays out. If, in fact, Clemson goes undefeated and you've got Michigan, Ohio State, Tennessee all sitting there with 1 loss, or Michigan or Ohio State, and then Tennessee with 1 loss, I should say. But this is how I kind of see it playing out. I think, again, they're going to put Tennessee at 3, Clemson at 4. Maybe they put Clemson at 3, Tennessee at 4, but those are my 4 teams. And if Ohio State were to beat Michigan, obviously you just put them at number 2. And I don't think Michigan would have as good of an argument to be ahead of Clemson because their schedule not as tough. In the non-conference, they didn't play anyone in the non-conference. I know Notre Dame hasn't been great, but at least Ohio State did play a decent non-conference team. So that's kind of the way I see it. Plus, Ohio State will have to go on the road to play Penn State. That also would make their resume a little bit better. But that's my top 4. So the teams that I considered: Ohio State at 11-1. I think Oregon wins out. I think they win the Pac-12 championship, but I don't think that's going to be enough to get them in. I think TCU probably loses a game somewhere, and I think they finish 12-1. Maybe they go 12-0 and lose in the Big 12 championship, or maybe they lose a game during the season, get upset somewhere, and then turn around and win the Big 12. But I think they're going to lose 1 game and be there at 12-1 and definitely have an argument as well. And then again, Alabama losing to Georgia, that's going to give them 2 losses, so they really wouldn't be in this conversation anymore, even though their 2 losses would come to 2 playoff teams. So I guess you could put Alabama in here in this conversation as well. So how will that play out if these are the 4 teams? We'll start with Georgia, Clemson. I think Georgia's the better team. A game that stays close for a little while, but I think the Bulldogs will pull away. Their defense and the athleticism that they have, the depth that they have, they will wear down Clemson. Stetson Bennett, maybe he's not a Heisman candidate anymore like we thought after the first couple of games, but he's still a veteran quarterback, and he's been here already won a national championship. He'll be ready, and I think he'll lead Georgia over Clemson. Then you've got Michigan and Tennessee. This will be a great matchup. This will be a good one. If you look at the psychological advantage here, Michigan, they made the playoff last year, so they've already been there. This is Tennessee's first trip to the playoff, and this is how it goes in sports a lot of times. You see a teams kind of take steps. Like they'll make the playoff or the playoffs, whatever sport. They'll make it 1 year, but then they don't go very far. Then the next year they make a deeper run. It's just kind of the way it works if you look at the history of sports. And not always, but a lot of times it does happen like that. And so I think Michigan, they're prepared. They know what to expect. They're a really good team. Tennessee, the bright lights for the first time here in the college football playoff. It'll be a great game. That Tennessee offense, very tough to stop. But I think Michigan, they'll be able to score in this game against a Tennessee defense that is not great. Pretty good against the run, but not good against the pass. And I think Michigan kind of slows the game down, runs the ball, controls the clock, and they would win a very close one. But really a game that I think could go either way. I'm going to go with Michigan, though, and they take that next step. They get to the national championship where they will face Georgia, a team that put them out in the semifinals last year. That game was not close, but this is an improved Michigan team. This is a Michigan team that I think is better equipped to handle this Georgia team. And because of that, I think this will be a good game. But at the end of the day, I just think Georgia's the best team in the country. They have shown, like I said earlier, at their best, this team is really, really, really good. And I think they'll be at their best here in the playoff. And I think they beat Michigan and win back-to-back national championships. So those are my predictions. I know everyone thinks it's crazy that I've got Michigan in the playoff and not Ohio State. It's not like Michigan didn't just beat Ohio State last year. And like I said, Michigan is better than they were last year. So I don't think it's too crazy to say that Michigan could win that game. It's a toss-up. Now, I'm not saying I don't feel confident in saying that. I'm not going to go out here and say, yeah, Michigan's definitely going to beat Ohio State. But I think you have to at least think that it's possible that does happen, and there is a decent chance. So Georgia winning it all. These are my playoff picks. Would love to get your picks. Give me your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.